This is the Paul McGuire Report. I'm Paul McGuire. On today's program, we're going to talk about not speculation, but the factual reality of today's news in light of Bible prophecy. What does today's news say? FBI, secret society that met after the election. And I'm reading from an article from PJ Media and other sources. And so the claim is that these two high-level operatives made reference to a FBI secret society that met immediately the day after election to come up with a solution with what they believed was a problem, which was the election of the President of the United States, Donald Trump. Now, what's interesting about this is that theoretically we live in a constitutional government where we, the people, and I would suggest, they sell these pocket size. Make sure you get one, not some, one that's made up and fictitious, but these nice little pocket size. I had one here in my office desk in the studio. Your Bill of Rights, Declaration of Independence, written down for you. I mean, it's really short, really simple, and it gives you just like the bullet points of what your legal rights are supposed to be under the Constitution of the United States of America. Now, we all know, hopefully, that when we were in grammar school or whatever, we learned that what made America different was that we, the people, the American people, ran the government. This idea that you and I are to be cowering slaves for our government is 180 degrees the opposite of what the founding fathers intended. There has been subversion. So this reference to an FBI secret society that met after the day of the election, and we know that a former FBI director came out and said there's an email they have, a factual email between former FBI director Mueller and another former FBI director, and they communicate between one another, and they are both staunch Democrats, which is their right in their private life. But in the document, they say that in the remote chance, that Trump actually wins the presidency, we need an insurance policy, which Mueller was referencing a way of paralyzing or impeaching Trump in the remote chance that he gets elected. Why? Because Trump's a threat to our country? No, simply because these people, they don't like Trump because he doesn't represent, whatever they believe in or however they're making money on the side, I guess. So this is a contradiction to the American system, because the American system says we, the people of the United States of America, elect our representatives, including the President of the United States, to serve us. And no one in government or the media or in any other religion or in any other area of society has a right to abuse their power, especially in government. When I say government, I'm talking about, high-level FBI, CIA, congressmen, things like that. They don't have the right to overturn the election. They don't have the right to overturn the election because they don't agree with the results. That is subversion. That is breaking the law. That is overturning. That is an attempt to overturn the constitutionally elected President of the United States just because you and your pals and the people you're doing secret business deals with, like the Clinton Foundation, you don't like it. Okay, I found my pocket blue. It's small, it's thin, you can carry it anywhere, it's easy to read. Somebody gave it to me. I think if you contact the Heritage Foundation, you can get a copy. I'll tell you what, I'll put the contact information for you on paulmcguire.us, and that way you can just click one button and it'll take you to a link where you can get yourself a copy of this handy little Declaration of Independence, the Constitution of the United States. Because I'm telling you, when I first read this, I didn't laugh. Well, I almost laughed, but not because it was funny, because it was tragic. Because the mere reading of the actual document of the Declaration of the Independence and the Constitution of the United States in itself gives you a thorough education as to what the laws of our land are really all about. You see, you can spend 4 years in any public school system studying the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, but they'll never really read it for you in context. Here you have your own handy copy, and you can read it. So let's look at just some of these things. And this is not a program on the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Although you should be aware of the fact that people who publicly speak out about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, that George Washington and Benjamin Franklin and all the other founding fathers fought a revolutionary war for and died for, and all the Christians, you could be profiled. You could be profiled by Big Brother as being an extremist because you dare. It's insanity, man. It's not insanity, it's tyranny. That's what it is. Because you dared to read the legal document that governs our land. Why are they so afraid of you reading it? Because they're burning it alive in front of you. So let's see what it says. And I want to read you something from the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And by the way, the language of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights of the United States of America is completely different and unique than any other legal document of any other nation in the history of mankind. Unless you understand that, you don't understand anything. And that's why it's important, because it's the only document that promotes freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of religion, and all the other freedoms that make it possible for us to live and do what Jesus Christ says. That is not in the European Union Constitution. It's not in the United Nations Constitution or any other constitution. This is an important program. You need to send a link of this program to somebody who needs to hear it. And you can do that by going to paulmcguire.us. That's paulmcguire.us. This is the Paul McGuire Report. And we're going to break down for you this important news story today, which two top Republicans are calling for a special counsel to investigate the Mueller probe. And the reason for that is because the two Republicans who want this special counsel to investigate Mueller and his probe, they referenced an FBI secret society that met the day after the election. Now, let me just stop there for a second. We continually hear people who, when they're confronted with something that's different or something that's out of the box or something that's not part of their regular mind programming, they give the knee-jerk reaction, oh, if it's a conspiracy theory, it's a conspiracy theory. Well, you know, I hate to break it to you, not to you, but to the people that you talk to, but conspiracy theories have been a reality in history since the beginning of time. I mean, the conspiracy to murder Julius Caesar, was a conspiracy theory. End of story. There was a conspiracy behind the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. There was a conspiracy behind the assassination of John F. Kennedy. So conspiracies are part of history. Now, the FBI is supposed to be protecting our nation internally from enemies and threats. The FBI and the heads of the FBI are not supposed to be manipulating the outcome of the election, so they're not supposed to be using their power to overrule the right of the people, we the people, to elect our own president. The FBI is not supposed to be using its incredible power to ensure that their candidate, they're not supposed to have a candidate, they're supposed to defend the right of the people to determine a candidate. So, but here we have an FBI talking among itself, documents with Mueller and other people, where they're talking about doing everything they can to destroy the Trump election so he will not become president. And then Mueller writes that to his cohort that we need an insurance policy just in case, just in case, in the remote chance Trump does win for president, we need to have a secret plan to destroy him, to get him impeached. And that is why they made reference to this FBI secret society. Now, most of you understand this, but I'm telling you right now, your average American is so dumbed down, is in such a trance state, including the millennials, that they don't even understand what's going on. When you have the FBI, which is a quasi form of the secret police, it's supposed to be benevolent, it's supposed to be patriotic, it's supposed to adhere to the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. But when you have, I'm not talking about all of the FBI, I'm talking about whatever percentage of very high-level FBI agents there are who are corrupted. It appears, and I'm an outsider, obviously, but it appears there's two FBIs. There's the good FBI and the bad FBI. And it appears that that same dynamic is at work in numerous intelligence and law enforcement agencies. You have the good CIA and the bad CIA. Well, according to these memos, these guys and girls are very, very bad and evil because they break the law. They attacked Donald Trump. If these documents and everything proves to be true, which it looks like they will be true, prove to be true, they attacked Donald Trump. This entire Russian collusion was a fabricated, fictional story, which I knew it was the day I heard it. And many of you knew it was the day you heard it. Why? Because we had inside facts? No, but we could smell a rat. You could smell a rat, I could smell a rat, and guess what? I'm looking at the faces of the rats right now on the internet. So where they got their so-called classified intelligence on Donald Trump making secret deals from the Russians, they got it directly from an individual that was high up in the Clinton Foundation. And the Clinton Foundation and the DNC had compiled a secret dossier that was made up. It was basically fictional, with the help of a former British intelligence agent, designed to stop Trump from being elected or to impeach him and remove him from office if he did get elected. So FBI, Mueller, and the other intelligence agencies didn't go out in a law-abiding manner and gather factual evidence against Trump. They simply received the work basically done for them by Hillary and the DNC, who put this thing together. They didn't care whether it was true or not, as long as it sounded true, for the political motive of removing him from office. This means the FBI, or at least these high-level leaders, former directors of the FBI, they're the ones guilty of collusion. They're the ones guilty of committing a crime because they're committing the worst crime of all. They are overturning the Constitution of the United States. They are trying to rule America under a police state rather than respecting the people the people's right to elect whatever individual they want. So that's why you have to know your Constitution. So this handy little guide, which gives you the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, I was just glancing through it. And the wisdom of the founding fathers, many of them were Christians. It's just stunning. Now, here's a quote in the foreword of this publication, and it's from the English Christian theologian G.K. Chesterton, and this is what he said: "America is the only nation in the world that is founded on a creed. That creed is set forth with dogmatic and even theological lucidity. In the Declaration of Independence, perhaps the only piece of practical politics that is also theoretical politics and also great literature, it enunciates that all men are equal in their claims to justice, that governments exist to give them that justice, and that their authority is for that reason, just." Now, this is a profound statement by one of the world's greatest philosophers who happened to be a Christian, G.K. Chesterton. And what he's saying here is that America's document is totally unique, because it puts forth the proposition that all men are equal, and that all men, because they are equal, whatever race you are, that your government exists to give you the justice that you are due, okay? And that the only authority that the government has is for that reason, just. So what Chesterton is saying is anytime a government departs from guaranteeing and protecting the rights for justice for the average man or woman, and we're all equal in the image of God, then that government has become dictatorial and illegitimate. Now, you may not like this if you're in the EU, New Zealand, Australia, or Asia, or whatever. America's not perfect. We are not. Our government is not functioning, by the way, according to the Constitution and Bill of Rights. We have slick, slippery salesmen like former Vice President Al Gore and Mother Earth worship goddess Gaia devotee Al Gore, who erroneously say that the Constitution is an evolving document, which is a bunch of horse you know what. And as I've said before, none of you in your right mind would sign an insurance policy. You wouldn't buy a car. You wouldn't lease a car. You wouldn't fill out a credit card application where it said that I'm signing this and I agree to all the terms of this contract, and I agree that this contract is an evolving document. It may actually say the opposite of what it's saying now, 3 years from now, but I'll abide by it. Nobody would be so nuts. That's what Al Gore is saying when he says the Constitution is an evolving document. It is not an evolving document. Okay, so Thomas Jefferson, a brilliant man, a deist, somewhat influenced by Christianity, but nevertheless a defender of Christianity, he proclaimed that the American rights and the American fight for liberty established a constitution to secure these rights and to order the hard-won liberty. Thomas Jefferson called our Constitution and Bill of Rights unquestionably the wisest constitution ever yet presented to men. Now that's a fact. That's a fact. And this is why the millennials are, somebody attached a vacuum cleaner to their heads and sucked their brains out. That's sarcasm. The fact of the matter is that however flawed, and we are very flawed in a corrupt nation right now. Let's not pretend we're anything but that. But You see, the founding documents, the legal documents, the Constitution, every other nation, especially the communist nations, they have nothing to do about the rights of the people. It's all about the rights of the elite. But they just don't call them the elite. They call them the party or whatever. And then, of course, the two biggest con jobs in the world are the UN. Bono, we need to pray for Bono. I was very critical of him the other day. And that's fine, because when you're a public figure, you can be challenged. And I will tell you, I like U2's music. I like Bono's music. You may not. I like it. I mean, I wasn't a big fan of them when they first came out. I certainly didn't believe that they were a Christian band like everybody thought they were. But I like their music. And over the years, I've liked their music. I like their songs like Vertigo. I like it like It's a Wonderful Day. I even like this propaganda song. I don't like the video, but I like the song. I don't like the lyrics of the song, but I like the melody or whatever you want to call it. So I think he's a very talented musician. I think he's a showman, and which he's supposed to be. He's a performer. I think he's a good artist, and in a day of when I was like growing up, there were a lot of incredible rock and roll bands. You may say I'm prejudiced. Well, say what you want. To me, I see a lot of mediocre rock and roll bands and pop stars compared to the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. That's all. But I like his music. I think I would have I think I would like the guy. He seems to be somebody who's likable. But, I'd love to sit down with him without him having his handlers pull him out of the room and just talk to him man to man. So there's, no ego thing, nobody watching or listening. And just talk to Bono for about, it would take about 6 hours. We probably have to eat lunch. And just teach him. And he would be resistant because he probably thinks he knows everything, like John Lennon. But I'd like to teach him the facts regarding the UN and the philosophy he's espousing in his videos. Because you see, he doesn't have this is a delicate thing, he doesn't have the intellectual depth and the education to understand that he's being used as a pawn, just like, I like John Lennon. Of all the Beatles, John Lennon was my favorite. Okay? But John Lennon, Bono too. Bono does have more of a philosophical nature, a thinking nature. John Lennon of the Beatles had the most philosophical and thinking nature of all of the Fab Four, okay? But the problem is none of these guys really did their education and homework, and therefore they became stooges, they became pawns, they became puppets for this globalist order. Now, once upon a time in my life, I believed what Bono and John Lennon did, but I then educated myself. I studied all kinds of things, and then I had a total change because, when you're confronted with the truth, you can reject it, or you can. So I'd love to sit down with the guy because I think he would be open to reason. Okay, so he's promoting this global government thing. But see, Jefferson and our founding fathers. What I'm trying to explain to you now, that most of you know, okay. And some of you are learning. And I applaud you for being willing to learn. Because guess what? Once upon a time, Paul McGuire didn't know all the things that he's talking about. He had to learn it somewhere. And I learned it from a wide spectrum of sources. I'll just name one. I mean, Dr. Francis Schaeffer was a huge influence in my life. But some of you remember Stan Monteith, Dr. Stan. I was on his show many times as a guest. I had him a guest on my show many times. When I first heard Stan Monteith driving in the car in Southern California, he had kind of an eerie voice, this deep voice. And he was always talking about conspiracy theories in the Bible. And I must admit, I didn't know how to categorize them. This was years ago. But guess what? Whenever I was in the car, or I kind of make sure when I was doing errands on Saturday when he came on the local station, KBRT, Crawford Broadcasting, company, a great network and a great radio station. I hosted a syndicated program for them for 10 years. And they would air, and I don't know if they still do or not, Stan Monteith. And he would bring up all this freaky conspiracy stuff, okay? And I didn't just laugh at it and slam the door and say conspiracy theory like a robot. Yeah, it was intimidating to me. Yes, it was a challenge to everything I believed. But I listened to him carefully. And his guests, and he himself was very intelligent, and he presented a very convincing argument for his so-called conspiracy theories. And so I began to read the material. I began to read his articles, and I began to listen. And as I researched his articles and heard his material, I realized that in every area that I checked up on him to see if what he was saying was true, 100% of the time, he was totally right, you see. And so people read my articles if they're honest or they listen to the program. And it may be foreign to them, it may be challenging to them, but I challenge them to stay with it, or I challenge you to stay with it and check it out. If it's not true, throw it in the garbage. But if it's true, you need to change just like I did. Okay, so the Constitution, our founding fathers knew it was different. The founding fathers knew that the French Revolution that occurred very close to the time of the American Revolution it was supposed to be outwardly, superficially, it was supposed to be like the American Revolution, but key words were removed and key words were inserted. So like words like God and inalienable rights from God and all that stuff was removed from the French Revolution. So the French Revolution became like an American Revolution minus the creator, minus inalienable rights from the creator, minus God, minus morality, and it birthed the communist revolutions. Now, in every man-centered revolution, which is what the French Revolution began, it always ended up bloodshed, torture, tyranny, murder, a nightmarish society. Well, France obviously is not that way today, but it was for a period of time. So our founding fathers understood that our nation was very unique in its three branches of government, which was a Christian concept that recognized the fallen nature of man. And then as I'm glancing at this document in front of me, the Declaration of Independence, it has all kinds of wordings about the impeachment of the President of the United States and how that's supposed to proceed, etc. And I got this eerie feeling. Well, it's not an eerie feeling. In the book that Troy Anderson and I wrote called Trumpocalypse, which is, by the way, it's been out since January 2nd. We deliberately did almost zero promotion before that. Some of you received some promotions, but that's because you're one of the people who obviously must access my media a lot because I only sent it out to a select few. So the book we wrote, Trumpocalypse, with the subtitle, The End Times President, A Battle Against the Globalist Elite and the Countdown to Armageddon, by the authors of the bestseller, The Babylon Code, Paul McGuire and Troy Anderson. This came out January 2nd, okay? It is now #1. And remember, we don't have some big PR company. We don't have some huge promotional budget. We're not Time Warner, or CNN. Our book contains a message that the mainstream media would like to destroy. So all the odds are against this. Having said that, because of the support and prayers and people like you who purchased the book, we are #1 in like 15 different categories on Amazon Books. We're #1. We're the #1 prophecy selling book in the world. And I could go down a whole list, okay? And that's huge. We're also the #1 seller for Faith Words, which is the religious division of Hachette Publishing Company, third largest publisher in the world. Now, that doesn't mean just because they're the third largest publisher in the world, that doesn't mean we have some giant marketing machine behind us, because we don't. Faith Words is their Christian division, and they have a lot of what you could call, and I don't mean this in a negative manner, but they have a lot of what you would call celebrity authors, Christian authors. And they're celebrities because they're on television 7 days a week, on all kinds of channels, and so their ministries are massive because of the power of the fact they're constantly on television and they're household names. But despite that, our book, Trumpocalypse, is selling faster than any of the big celebrity authors. And it's selling faster when you go into the secular marketplace than the vast majority of secular books. And this is with just, people like you, God bless you. Me, Troy, the remnant. Because we don't have, this guy who wrote, The Fight and the Fury? The whole media is promoting him. Of course he has a bestseller. Every mainstream media organization, including certain intelligence agencies, are promoting him. Anyway, it's a miracle because our book contains a message, by the way. A powerful bunch of messages. I mean, really, I'm talking about messages that will rock your world. Okay, these are not safe. Trumpocalypse is not a safe, tidy little book. Oh, it'll lift you up. It has the power of the gospel of Jesus Christ. It has biblical history in it. It glorifies God. It ties Bible prophecy into current events. But let me tell you something. We didn't pull any punches. That's why right on the cover it says, a battle against the globalist elite. We deal with the deep state in the book and a lot of heavy stuff. So, I'm saying that because the purpose of that book is to take some of the material I'm sharing with you today, and so when people read it, they become knowledgeable, they become educated, like you are. That's why it's a great thing to, if you buy a copy, lend it to people or encourage people to buy it. And then, of course, if you buy it on Amazon or wherever you buy it, give it a good review. Give it an outstanding review. Because, sadly to say, there are enemies who don't even buy the book. They're organized groups that write negative reviews routinely on all kinds of conservative Christian books in an effort to destroy them. See, we don't play games like that. You don't play games like that. We don't go on. If a guy writes a book promoting atheism, we don't go on his website, pretend to be buyers and write him a negative review. That's sleazy. There's no ethics in that. And the problem is that there are these billionaire-financed, hard-left activist groups that play dirty. And a lot of times it's not people. It's bots and algorithms. So they have computerized systems to attack. Well, look, I'm just going to lay it out the way it is, which is I'm going to tell you the truth. Many of you know the truth, okay? We are right now in an all-out cultural, spiritual war for the destiny of the United States of America. And there are people in this country, you have to remember that people that subscribe to a Marxist, communist, hard, progressive worldview, and many of them would never identify themselves as such, but they always believe, if you really scratch beneath the surface, that the ends justify the means. In other words, they believe it's justified to do wrong, immoral, and evil things if it furthers what they perceive to be their good cause, which is to get rid of Donald Trump. That's why if you drive around Southern California and other states, But if you drive around California, let me just spell it out for you. And this is true in other liberal states. You can have a nice car. When I say nice car, I mean, it could be a Honda, okay? It could actually be any car. But usually if you have a nice car and it's clean and neat, no matter what you spent for it, that's considered, but there's a pride of ownership. People like their cars, whether it's a Honda or Toyota or Nissan or Mercedes or whatever. People like to have nice cars in California because the weather is good, so people spend time getting their cars clean, except for me because I'm too busy. So if you were to dare have if you were to dare have a Trump, banner or something on the back of your car, especially during election time or even now, I can guarantee you, without a shadow of a doubt, that within a week's time, if you're driving around and shopping and parking and stuff like that, anywhere in the Los Angeles area, LA County area, you will find that your car will be keyed heavily, big gouge marks, and for one reason. And the reason is, guess what? You dared to express your support for Trump. So, I mean, this happens. I've talked to huge numbers of people at social gatherings. They've all experienced the same thing. That's why I never put a political bumper sticker of any kind on my car. I'm not afraid of expressing my viewpoints. But if you park it in a supermarket parking lot or a Walmart or Costco or whatever, there's going to be somebody, you're going to see a nasty key gouge. I mean, a nasty one, just like real anger. And what did you do wrong? You used your constitutional right to put the bumper sticker or whatever, or sign or whatever of the candidate you support. Okay? Now, what's interesting is, since California is a super liberal state and most people are liberals, if you had like the people who would drive around with Hillary for president or Hillary bumper stickers, none of the conservatives, okay, will key the liberals' cars. I mean, I'm sure percentage-wise there has to be some itsy-bitsy 1% might. But 99% of conservatives will not key a liberal's car because they have a big Hillary bumper sticker, okay? And many times you'll notice, which is that the more affluent cars, I would say on average, it is the more affluent cars, the Lexus, the Mercedes, the Audis, I'm leaving some out, but the expensive versions or the expensive SUVs or whatever, the expensive cars, sorry, this is not sexist, but driven by women a lot of the time. And you say, how do you know? Because when I walk by, I won't get into it, but I see people coming in and out of the car. And it's often women of a particular age group. Women who are usually between 40 to 45, more likely 45 to 65 will be the most vicious, not the younger women. And the way it works is, because I've seen this happen, that liberal woman in that age group, and I would say also that not all the time, but many times, again, not all the time, that woman that will key somebody because they have a conservative bumper sticker like Trump or whatever is of the white race. Okay? Okay, they're white, the most vicious. And the other thing I've noticed is that they're often, at least if you're judging by their car, they're often appear to be the most affluent. Only in the sense that their cars are high-end cars. You're talking white Mercedes or silver Mercedes, high-end models. Audis, BMWs, whatever, Lexus, but they're high-end. models. So it tells you the person is if the car is any measurement of their affluence, they're relatively affluent. Now, again, this is a totally non-scientific survey on my part. Whereas women in the same age group who are Hispanic or African American, you statistically, again, non-scientific, I don't see, it's almost non-existent that they will key the car. It's white women. And that's because that group of white women who I guess they perceive themselves as feminists or whatever. Now, that isn't to say there aren't people who are conservatives or Christians who don't do mean and nasty things. They do. But just in this particular area, it's a conspicuous thing. And when I'm in social conversations, I hear stories about this all the time. So why is that? Because deep down inside, these people who will key somebody else's car believe that the end justifies the means. Now, I'm not saying they're communists or Marxists, or they may not even identify with being progressives or whatever. They truly believe, like you got to get in, what movie was I watching the other night? I do watch movies because I'm now in the film business again, but I'm selective. And I study movies when I watch them for character development, scripting and stuff. And I forgot what I was watching, but he was talking about getting inside the head of your enemy. And it was some intelligence guy. Maybe it was just some show like Brave or something. I don't know. But you got to get inside the head of your enemy so that you can defeat him. See, Christians don't. No, Christians as a culture don't read their Bibles. So they don't even realize that the popular expression, getting inside the head of your enemy or get inside the head of your enemy, is actually a biblical admonishment. I get dumb emails from people who will go, well, why are you talking about the devil and conspiracy theories and stuff? You know, that's evil. Well, the Apostle Paul said, among numerous other quotations and verses in the Bible, don't be ignorant of the devil's schemes and strategies. And there are other verses which talk about don't be unaware, don't be ignorant, don't be naive, don't be uneducated about the strategies of the powers of darkness, which is a scriptural theological way of saying get inside the head of your enemy. Now, don't become so absorbed with evil that you become consumed by it, but understand their mindset, because that's the only way you can defeat it. So you have to understand that in their fanaticism, and they would deny they're fanatics, they believe the end justifies the means. So in their heads, they truly believe. And you know, I grew up a liberal. I grew up an atheist. I grew up with liberals. My family is all liberals, except some that I had the privilege of leading to the Lord. So, I mean, liberalism and liberal activism, I mean, that's like, it's in my DNA. It's like I grew up in New York City, and it's like, it's the culture that I know. So they truly believe in their minds that they're doing the right thing. By the way, they truly believe that when they key your car or whatever expression of protest they use, they believe in their hearts that they're doing the right thing. They believe they're teaching you a lesson. They believe totally in their hearts that Donald Trump is truly an evil, psychopathic, power-hungry man who is corrupt. They believe he's incompetent. They believe he's power-hungry. They believe he's mentally unstable. They believe he's likely to press a nuke button. They truly believe that. And they truly believe that Hillary Clinton was by far, even with all her, the controversy and crimes she's been accused of, they still believe, they wouldn't necessarily defend those crimes, but they believe that Hillary would be far better for this country in many, many ways. So you see, they're true believers. they really believe they're fighting against evil, and Trump personifies evil to them. Therefore, because they're fighting against evil, they feel they are fully justified in doing things like keying your car or violent protests or whatever, because they believe in their hearts that the danger that Trump represents is so extreme and so dangerous that it requires a response that is very aggressive. So they don't have a conscience problem when they key your car or do violent protests and stuff. You see, you got to get inside the head of other people. Now, that doesn't excuse them, but in their internal moral universe, they think they're doing the right thing. So the problem is, though, that the left as a culture, progressives as a culture, and that's the culture I came out of. As I've said many times, my mother is a card-carrying member of the ACLU, and she's a liberal activist, always has been. There's numerous liberal activists in my family. And I will tell you this about my mother, who I love dearly. She is far more ethical in just about every area except what we might call the like abortion, being murder and stuff. Because of her humanist worldview, she doesn't see it as murder. Now, I'm not excusing my mother, but when it comes to most areas of morality, she is far more ethical and far more diligent and sacrificing than many, many Christians that I know. I mean, she, and being a liberal, but she was born in Missouri, and I was born in Missouri, she would discipline me and my sisters for rudeness, for not eating our food, for disrespect. And, she did not believe in that area. She believed in if you spare the rod, you spoil the child. So she didn't hit us with a rod. All the liberals today would have a heart attack and call it child abuse. And I don't think people should be hitting people with rods, by the way, because we do live in a psychopathic world, okay? Christians and non-Christians. And there's a lot of lunatics out there. And if you give them some kind of theological permission to use a rod on a child, the next thing you know, kids are going to end up at the emergency room because people are not morally responsible enough in our time period. So I would not advocate that. In fact, and you say, well, that's against the Bible. No, I would take that verse. The verse is, it's not all about using a rod. It's about using discipline or appropriate punishment if necessary, which can be physical. Okay, like spanking, legitimate spanking, not brutalizing your child spanking. My mother would hit me up until the age of 9 or 10. It's humiliating. I mean, I was practically a grown man, at least in my own mind. She would take off her slipper, or her shoe, which would be leather. And she would, not in any sick way, like pulling my pants down or something, but she would whack my posterior as hard as she could, okay? Now, it didn't hurt all that much. It was more humiliating. But, as a boy of 9 or 10, you respect your mother. So I'm not going to use my physical strength to defend myself against my mother. I mean, that's not what a real man does. So I would try to convince her not to do it. But if I did something like really wrong, she believed that justice had to be done, even though she was a liberal. And she would pound on my behind with her leather shoe and whack, whack, whack. And I would hide under the piano. We had a big piano. And the only reason she didn't go under the piano to chase me is, you have to kind of like bend your back hard to do it. So why am I talking about this? I'm saying that she was a classic liberal, but she believed in right and wrong. And you had to tell the truth. And if you lied, you were punished. If you did something mean, you were punished. If you did, she had a long list of moral rules. Okay, uh, you would be punished, and if you didn't eat all of your food on your table, you would be. I'm not saying she would hit me with a shoe just because I didn't eat my vegetables. The punishments were appropriate to the crime or transgression. But I'll tell you what, me and my sisters to this very day, yes, sir, we're polite, we're courteous, we are always respectful, and I think all of us, including myself, we eat everything on the plate that's served to us, and we always say thank you. So we're all, I'm not saying we're perfect, but we that discipline was a big positive thing in our lives. None of us suffer from emotional trauma, PSTD, or the scars of abuse because of my mother's discipline. Why? Because she did it because she loved us, not because she was a psychopath. Now, conversely, and I had the privilege of leading my father to the Lord, he was, it's hard to say this about your dad, but he was alive. He wouldn't mind me saying it, I don't think, as long as I told the whole truth. I led him to Christ. He was born again, and it changed his life completely. And he began to express love. But when I was a child, he was a rotten father to me and my sisters. And part of the problem is he was an alcoholic. He drank. He was a fully functioning alcoholic. Always went to work, prospered in his career. That kind of alcoholic. Didn't walk around necessarily slurring with his remarks or anything, but, a functioning alcoholic, which is many people are like that in America. But his discipline, which was not physical usually, except once, it was more verbal and psychological, which was actually more cruel because it was vicious. But he was not disciplining me and our sisters out of love. It was out of rage. And that leaves scars and abuse, whether it's physical or psychological. If it's being done out of hatred and rage, which he had lots of, you're going to abuse and harm a child. So I'm distinguishing between the two. Anyway, my mother is very high standard of morality. She would never, ever dream of keying anybody's car because they had the opposite political viewpoint from her. Now, she might say out loud, well, I feel like doing this, right? She would never do it because her moral code is too high. So I want to be honest in my representation of liberals and progressives and people and atheists, etc. They are often, not always, but many times they can be the most ethical and moral people there are. So I don't want to come away from this discussion leading you with a false impression that it's just liberals and progressives, etc., that key people's cars and justify anything because the ends justify the means. No, that's not what I'm saying. There is a disturbing percentage that are like that. It's probably a minority percentage because many of the true liberals I know have a very, I don't agree with them, but they have a very high standard of ethics. Sometimes. Okay, so now moving from that, when you see some of these demonstrations from leftists and feminists and all kinds of people, notice the rage, the anger, the hysteria, the cup boiling over, the explosive emotion in the atmosphere, especially among white women, let's say between 40 and 65. Okay? They are among the most vicious. And you say, Paul, why are you attacking white people? You're white. It's not about attacking white people. It's about telling the truth. Of course, you have nutty groups like Black Lives Matter. That's a whole different thing. But the point is, you see these demonstrations, and it's very disturbing because what you see is an anger level that is out of control. Okay? And when you have an anger level that's out of control, A clever leader or a subversive force can harness that anger, create a movement which can topple a government, create an unconstitutional regime change, initiate a revolution or a violent atmosphere which provokes law and order. So it's a very dangerous situation. Now, what you saw in Ferguson, Missouri, and places like that, that's a completely different dynamic. That is high-charged emotional anger due to an event or a perceived event. But the point I'm trying to make is that from a strategic standpoint, whether you're on the left or the right, if you allow a culture of violence and intense emotional volatility and rage and anger, you increase the potential of shooting, murder, burnings, riots, rapes, anarchy, violence, burning things down. And look, that is the environment. Chaos in the streets, riots in the streets, unbridled anger is the environment that tyrants and police states thrive on. They are looking with lust for the perfect opportunity in terms of social chaos, social anarchy, social breakdown. They're lusting, they're looking across the horizon to see such a situation, because that gives them the cover to create and call for martial law or a police state. And once they do that, even if they created the crisis secretly, manufactured crisis, then Constitution is burned to the ground. We live in a military state or a police state. And God help us if it's totalitarianism on the right or the left, it will be hell on earth. Dr. Francis Schaeffer, the brilliant theologian who did so much to influence my life, said in one of his books 35 years ago, he warned the Christian culture because he saw some of the Christian culture was attracted towards right-wing authoritarianism, right-wing politics. And he warned, he wasn't a liberal, but he warned on a philosophical, historical basis that because of the philosophy of humanism being the predominant philosophy in our nation right now, that humanism, which is true, in every culture where it has thrived, every nation where it has thrived, always brings about anarchy, social chaos, riots, instability in the nation. Humanism always produces crisis and chaos, always. And he said it doesn't matter whether a dictatorship arises from either the right wing or the left wing. He says a dictatorship, a police state, will always, with mathematical certainty, arise from an environment of chaos and crisis. And then he said, it doesn't matter whether it's a right-wing police state or a left-wing police state, the results will be the same. So his warning to Christians was don't be seduced by people who know how to manipulate chaos to get you to go along with some kind of authoritarian government out of fear or self-protection or whatever. Because the end result, whether it's a right-wing dictatorship or a left-wing dictatorship, what Hitler did, what Stalin did, both brought the nations basically to the same place. The same with Chairman Mao. It doesn't matter whether it comes from the right or the left. But as society breaks down, it increases the probability for a dictatorship to manage the chaos. Now, this is precisely, and this is where you have to understand history. You have to be able to connect the dots. You have to have a mind that is fully functioning. You're using your right brain and your left brain. You're conducting a critical analysis of the big picture. And then you incorporate the truths of history as well as biblical truth. And It doesn't take, you don't have to be a prophet called by God to figure this out. You just have to understand history and use the intelligence that God has given you. And you will notice that throughout human history, whenever there is great social chaos and upheaval and crisis, it always leads to a brutal authoritarian dictatorship, either on the right or the left. Now, the communists, the Marxist revolutionaries in our nation that have been embedded in our nation for the last 100 years, they fully understand this. They call it manufactured crisis. Abby Hoffman, who turned out to be a communist, I didn't know, a radical activist that I demonstrated with in Manhattan when I was 15 years old. I thought he was just like a free thinker. Boy, was I naive. He wasn't a free thinker. He finally admitted, like 30 years later, shortly before he committed suicide, he admitted that he was a communist all the time. He was a communist revolutionary. And he didn't name the names of his friends. He said, but they were also counterculture heroes. He said they were communist revolutionaries. He said it's always been about communism. And see, that's why in my more honest moments of self-reflection, I really can't attack the millennials, because I was just as gullible and vulnerable and stupid as they were, because I really didn't know my history way back then. And I was seduced by the counterculture, and Abby Hoffman and the Weather Underground tried to recruit me, which I did not accept their advances, because to me, they were hardcore communists, and I saw no evidence of communism working anywhere in the world. So I wanted nothing to do with the Weather Underground. So the point is, though, that manufactured crisis is a technique of communist Marxist revolution. You create a crisis, and we have tenured university professors in the highest level universities in America who can't be fired. They are committed Marxist communist revolutionaries, openly committed to indoctrinating their students into becoming communist or Marxist revolutionaries. Nobody fires them. And this is what the Weather Underground couple, Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn, what they're into. They live a very wealthy lifestyle. Notice how all these communists live wealthy lifestyles. And they believe that these two Columbia University professors, Cloward and Piven, and it is called the Cloward-Piven strategy. And they were professors at Columbia who devised a strategy for revolution in which you deliberately and strategically overwhelm every system in society. So you overwhelm the border problem, you overwhelm the healthcare problem, you overwhelm the finances and banking problems, you overwhelm the social structure, you overwhelm the police. Wherever you can jam up society, flood it, and break it down, you're supposed to do that and organize to do it as a communist revolution. And when you overwhelm the systems of capitalism, the university professors said, then it will break down. It's a manufactured crisis, and you will break down society. And then when you have anarchy and break down society, you will be able to put in place your communist Marxist dictatorship. This is what these people believe and teach openly. The Cloward-Piven strategy. I talk about this in my book, Mass Awakening. You need to read it, and you need to own it, the truth in it, and understand it. You need to read my first book, A Prophecy of the Future of America. It talks about this stuff in detail. Also my book, Conquering the Matrix, which deals with mind control, because communist revolutions rely heavily on mind control and subliminal persuasion. So the key here is that you, as Saul Alinsky, Now let's look at this very analytically. What is the statistical chance? What is the percentage rate? Some of you are gamblers or former gamblers. I'm not trying to get anybody to backslide into gambling. Okay, I've never been a gambler. But statistically, if you were placing a bet in Las Vegas, you would notice that manufactured crisis leads to chaos, which leads to radical transformation and change. So you create chaos intentionally. And so what are the percentages? What are the odds that two of the most powerful politicians in America in contemporary times, what are the odds in Vegas that both Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, as well as many others, occupying both the presidency and the highest offices in our land, were true disciples of Saul Alinsky, the most prolific communist, Marxist organizer for revolution? He defined his job as community organizer because it's more palatable. Like Obama defined himself as a community organizer. Let me define community organizer for you. Community organizer is a communist operative that works in a local community to radicalize them for the purpose of communist revolution. That's what community organizer is. Is it any wonder that he couldn't do anything with the economy? The man was economically incompetent because his training was to destroy American society. You want me to beat around the bush? That's what a community organizer does. Portraying community organizer in flowery language is called lying. A community organizer, more accurately, should be called a communist community organizer, because their sole purpose is to organize the community over key issues that they're concerned about, radicalize them, organize them, and turn them into communist revolutionaries who will then participate in a revolution to overthrow the government and the Constitution of the United States of America. That's what a community organizer is. That's what Saul Alinsky taught in his book, Rules for Radicals: How to be a Community Organizer, how to use manufactured crisis. One of his disciples was Barack Obama. Another key disciple was Hillary Clinton. I mean, he basically programmed Obama and Hillary Clinton. The way they operate, think, and do things comes right out of the communist playbook. Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals. You think it's an accident that Obama just happened to be best buddies with the two prominent leaders of the Weather Underground, Bernardine Dorn and Bill Ayers, and that Bill Ayers helped write that book that Obama wrote about his father? You think that's an accident? And that so many of Obama's key people in government were also part of this communist movement? You think that's an accident? It's not an accident. It's not an accident. Now, many of these people are still in Congress and the highest offices of the land. So what is their goal? Their goal is, in their own writings, I've read the writings of the Weather Underground. Like I said, they tried to recruit me. I volunteered as a young, naive, very misled kid. At about 16 years old, I went to the Black Panther Party headquarters in New York City and asked to become a member of the Black Panther Party, in which I met a bunch of tough black guys with black leather coats and jackets, and they kind of laughed and said, I can't be a member of the Black Panther Party. And I said, why not? And they said, because you're white. And being young and kind of stupid, I didn't accept that. I said, well, that's racial discrimination. And the leader, kind of laughed, and I guess he thought either I was crazy or I had a lot of guts. So he said kind of informally, okay, so we'll make you an honorary member of the Black Panther Party. Well, I never did anything with the Black Panther Party. I didn't participate in anything. I think I joined them in some demonstrations, but I never got involved in the real stuff that was going on. But many of the that Black Panther Party is totally different than the Black Panther Party of today. Today, they're ignorant. I mean, I've been on debates on the biggest shows in CNN and Fox News, and I've told, millions of people that I was made an honorary member of the Black Panther Party, especially when I'm debating against African-American progressive activists. And to my shock, these African-American progressive activists know nothing about the history of the Black Panther Party. And the current Black Panther Party has nothing to do with the original Black Panther Party. And people like Elridge Cleaver, him and I corresponded, I read his book, Soul on Ice, and he was somewhat intellectual, and therefore that appealed to me. And he was the minister of communication. He was an intelligent guy. The Black Panther Party today is a bunch of thugs. Black Lives Matter, programmed thugs. Antifa, they are a billionaire mind control cult. I'm deadly serious. I'm not joking. I'm not being sarcastic. Read Conquering the Matrix. Read my book, Conquering the Matrix. Read it and own the information and the contents. Understand it. Because if you'll take a couple of hours out of your life to read it and understand it, and I write in a fast-moving style, you will understand. Now, here's where it gets really, really heavy. And you're going to have to make a choice. Either I am a foaming at the mouth conspiracy theorist spouting irrational paranoia, or, surprise, I just happen to know what I'm talking about. I spent over 40 years researching it. My research comes from first-hand documented sources, first-hand quotes, personal interviews and experiences that took me 45 years to collect. And so when I give you an analysis on certain subjects, it's the product of a lifetime of research. And I do know what I'm talking about, by the way. And I happen to be correct. Why? Because I've done my homework. And the people who would refute what I talk about have done no homework. But you have to understand this. And this requires, you'll see that this is a theme in all of my books and talks and writings. But it's going to require you, not when I say you, I mean those of you that are new to the program, or people you may have just got it. Somebody may have sent you an archive of this program, and you're listening to me because they're trying to help you become aware and awake, and you're evaluating me. That's fine. You should. And you're trying to decide, because some of the stuff that I'm saying is not what you've normally heard, and it's a little bit radical to you. And some of you are on the verge of deciding, like, is this guy crazy? Can I trust what he's saying? Am I just going to shut him down and go back into living in a fog? No, I know. Many of you are in that place. Let me assure you, everything that I've said in this program, there was a time in my life where I thought everything I just said, there was a time in my life I would have rejected all of it as a total Twilight Zone conspiracy theory. That's before I did my homework. So this is going to require a jump in your awareness mentally. And I'm going to make a quick statement. You have to understand that we are now living in the future, okay? We're no longer living in the society of the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, or even 2000. Our society, especially because of computer technology, social media, and other technology, and surveillance technology, we are way farther into the future than most people realize. And that's the problem, is that the average individual is not really aware of or educated about just how far into the future we are in terms of the technology that is actually being used, because of people's lack of education to how far we've progressed scientifically. They think, well, this is far out. This is too futuristic. No, it's not futuristic. It's happening now. These technologies are up and running now. Like the theme of Minority Report, with few exceptions in that film, that technology is operational now. So what you have to understand is that this game plan, which is order out of chaos, goes back thousands and thousands of years. It is originally an occultic Luciferian principle, order out of chaos. It was adopted by secret societies. And secret societies, as we began the program with, are not conspiracy theories. I mean, sometimes they are, because sometimes people make up a lot of nonsense. But in many cases, what you think is a conspiracy theory is really a truth that you're not willing to study or research. So in the movie Minority Report with Tom Cruise, there's this biometric identification and billboards that flash personalized ads towards you. And then there's these clairvoyants and some kind of sensory deprivation chamber that can predict the future. So the whole thesis of Minority Report is they bust you before you actually commit the crime, because they can predict through technology and a blend of occultism. They can predict that you're going to commit the crime, and right before you actually commit it, they arrest you. It's called pre-crime. Well, we're already moving in that direction in our society. We have all kinds of computers, especially computers that interface with the internet and social media, that can predict your emotional state. They can predict your habits, buying habits, etc. They can predict the probability of what you might do in any given circumstance. They can predict whether or not you may commit a crime in the future. And the scary thing is that they're accurate to a large degree. Not perfect, but accurate. And therefore, criminal justice is already moving in the direction, through the use of computer algorithms and bots, to categorize and profile people who, through analysis, have a high probability of committing a crime. The problem with that is, when you give that power into the wrong hands, which it has already been put in the wrong hands, you then can classify and label people through computers and algorithms and bots and social media, biometrics, so on and so forth. Anybody who might be a dissenter or not agree with your totalitarian, hardcore, left-wing, progressive socialist government is then profiled as a dangerous extremist. And then, of course, you try to put them in a concentration camp. The problem with people on the left, and I guess good-meaning liberals, is fatal naivete. Fatal naivete. Because they don't understand the basic historical maxim, which has never detoured in thousands of years of human history, which is this: once you develop and implement the either military police apparatus, I mean, this goes back to the time of King Herod, when he was slaughtering all the firstborn babies in an effort to prevent Jesus Christ, the Messiah, from being born. So then, as technology progressed and advanced, especially with early computer technology, and then back in the time when what your laptop can now do, small laptop, really thin. That originally took a refrigerated room with each computer, let's say, the size of a large home refrigerator. And you'd have about 10 or 12 of these computers with reels, like reel-to-reel tape recorders. It was computer recording material. You'd have 12 very large, what looked like kind of like refrigerators, except it was steel. And 12 of those in a refrigerated room could do what your laptop is doing now. So tremendous advances in computer technology. But computer technology taught mankind and the intelligence agencies globally, they began to discover that in some circumstances, a human being could be programmed just like a computer could be programmed. And depending upon what input you put into the computer would determine the output that would come out of the computer. And this was a very simplistic definition of individual men and women who are created in the image of God. And therefore, it was from its start a deficient and faulty image, because every man and every woman alive is created in the image of God. We have the DNA of God. And in the eyes of the infinite personal living God of the universe, we have in our souls and beings, despite the fact that we're fallen, the majesty, the glory, the magnificence of our Creator. And we are important beings individually because God Almighty created us. The problem is when you adopt a humanistic approach to regulating the behavior of mankind, and you view man falsely as some kind of computer which can simply be programmed or deprogrammed. On one level, that contains degrees of truth which are applicable. A man's mind or a woman's mind or a child's mind can be programmed to varying degrees. So to varying degrees, God created the human mind and the human being in some respects to function like a computer, at least neurologically. But the grand design that God has overall for each man or woman is that each man or woman is created in the image of God and possesses so much more wonder and so much more beauty, and so vast treasures are placed inside every man or woman. So by viewing man or woman as a mere biological computer that you can program is to perceive men and women from a faulty viewpoint. A faulty viewpoint then means a perception which is based on a lie versus a perception based on a truth. And so you take, a 20%, 10% truth about mankind, that mankind or men and women are programmable, but we are not machines. You see, we're not evolved animals. We're not machines. We are created to be people of a very high stature, that if we believe in Jesus Christ and are born again, we are going to rule and reign with Christ for all eternity as priests and kings or princesses and queens. And we are made in the image of God. So this is a reductionist philosophy to make man like an animal or a simple computer. But see, sinful man then perpetuates that lie because it's utilitarian. It functions to serve him. And so when the computer technology industry was beginning to explode, they had what were called the Macy's conferences on cybernetics, where you'd have the leading neurological scientists like John C. Lilly, Dr. Gregory Bateson, Aldous Huxley, Norbert Wiener, the computer mathematician scientist, people in cybernetic theory, the RAND Corporation, so on and so forth. And what they began to do is develop techniques and methodologies to program people like you would program computers. which really is blasphemous because it distorts the godlike nature of every man and woman. But that's how our society began to change fundamentally, going back to the early 1900s when this computer technology first came out. So then you have what Aldous Huxley calls the scientific dictatorship, which is composed of the globalist elite, and they are the rulers. They are the invisible hand that rules global society. They're the globalist elite. They're the wealthiest international banking families. They're Illuminati bloodline families. They belong to secret societies, and they rule the masses behind shadow governments here in the United States also. That's why, going back to what we started with, the claim made by two Republicans that they referenced a document which revealed that the FBI, after the election of Donald Trump, there exists, according to them, an FBI secret society that met the day after the election of Donald Trump and attempted to figure out a way how they could overrule the will of we the people and impeach or get rid of Donald Trump as president, which means they fully intended, if these allegations are correct, to usurp the Constitution of the United States of America and to act as dictators and place the person of their choosing, not the choosing of the American people. This is a huge violation, by the way. So what is continually interesting, and you and I would never get away with it, by the way, is that the Republicans are now calling for a second special counsel to investigate the Mueller-Trump-Russia probe, because that probe is completely bogus. It's completely false. It was disproven. It was completely based on lies in which the mainstream media, owned by the globalist elite, perpetuate the lies, despite the fact that there's not a single shred of evidence that it was ever true. It was simply designed to destroy Trump by the Hillary Clinton Foundation and her key players. So, conveniently, President Obama enacted various laws and allegedly, according to this article, committed surveillance. There were substantial government surveillance abuses. And by the way, it wasn't just President Obama who has committed substantial government surveillance abuses. If these allegations and reports that keep piling up are true, implicating the NSA, the CIA, the FBI, and other intelligence agencies, it appears, again, if all these allegations from a multitude of sources are true, there has been a long-term, pervasive, institutionalized pattern of surveillance abuses against the American people, which, again, it's important to know that this is in direct violation of the Constitution of the United States of America. You're listening to the Paul McGuire Report. If you want to educate somebody, send an archive of this program by visiting paulmcguire.us, that's paulmcguire.us, and find a creative way to explain the program and send a link of this program you can get at paulmcguire.us and educate somebody with the truth. I apologize for the echo in part of this segment. No, we didn't move to a large hall. I pressed the wrong button, but we're going to keep it anyway, and we will change the audio settings right after this break and get rid of that echo for you. You're listening to the Paul McGuire Report. You are listening to the Paul McGuire Report. Again, back to this series of abuses of surveillance technology by numerous presidents, by the way. Obama being just one of many. And in this FISA abuse memo, and this is what should bother you as an American citizen, the FBI, quote, lost 5 months of key text messages between the anti-Trump / pro-Clinton FBI officials, Peter Strzok and his mistress, Lisa Page. And now there's talk of a secret society of officials within the FBI that apparently met the day after the election of Donald J. Trump to plot against the president-elect. Now, this is very important because it acknowledges the existence of an FBI secret society. Furthermore, as somebody who's been researching in this field for 45 years, not because I ever intended to be or wanted to be a conspiracy theorist, but my intention was to pursue the truth no matter where it led. And if that led to the fact that there indeed exists secret societies, then so be it, because I'm interested in truth. I'm not interested in social acceptance. I could care less what your friends think, or somebody who talks to me who, I mean, I shouldn't say could care less. I would like to persuade them and educate them about the truth. But if they choose to reject the truth and mock me based on the fact that they've invested less than 5 minutes of research and homework, I mean, it doesn't faze me at all. I could care less whether they scoff, laugh, or call me names. I mean, it's irrelevant to me, because truth is the truth. So now, I mean, this has been going on a long time, but now once again, and this has happened many times before, we see public evidence, a public discussion of the fact that a secret society that apparently consists of the highest level, a certain percentage of the highest level leaders in the FBI, they have a secret society, and they met to discuss what they were going to do with the fact that they met to plot against the president-elect Donald Trump. Well, what does plot mean? Well, it's evident what it means by their behavior. This group of high-level FBI officials who are part of this secret society did not like Trump, which is their right not to like him as private individuals. It's their right to not vote for them as private individuals. But it is not their right as people operating as FBI agents or directors to impose their personal political philosophy by force and by deceit on the rest of the American people. That is a coup. That is a revolution. That is a police state. And so they're plotting against the president-elect. For what? He hasn't done anything yet. He just got elected. Because they don't like his policies. And who knows, this is hypothetical, but who knows who they're really working for in terms of the globalist elite. So they're plotting to remove the president of the United States since before he actually got elected. And so they create this Russian collusion thing out of material created by the Clinton campaign. No hard intelligence evidence. And then they continue to plot. So Mueller and his whole team are completely defiled and corrupted. Now, the fact that the response by the Republicans is slow bothers me. They're planning to have an appointment of a second special counsel. And you know what? To me, and I could be wrong, but I'm reading between the lines. What this secret society at the top of the FBI did is such a subversion against the Constitution of the United States of America and the Bill of Rights that if it is proven true, if these allegations are true, it demands, you don't sit there and debate for months whether you're going to have an investigation. It demands the most immediate investigation, criminal investigation, into whether or not these allegations are true. And if they're true, there must be immediate, full prosecution under the law of the United States of America, in which the appropriate penalties must be applied to the individuals and groups, including the secret society, which means jail, prison time, or whatever the law demands. But more than that, this is an attempt to subvert, to destroy the United States of America. This is, and I'm not a legal scholar in this area, but I would venture to believe that there are many legal scholars who would tell you that this is treason. And treason against the United States of America is an entirely different crime than simply the lower level crimes. It's treason. There is a conspiracy to overthrow the duly elected President of the United States. And the media is covering it up. What does that tell you? Well, it's obvious. It should tell you this, that the real collusion that's going on comes down to this. There exists a very powerful globalist elite that runs the major governments through the world through a series of shadow governments, and they act as an invisible hand controlling the internal affairs of governments like the United States of America. They are above the law because they have the monetary power to be above the law. The crimes that are committed, the destabilization that occurs, happens because they have enormous financial power and they control and own the mainstream media, all the journalists, all the talking heads, all the personalities, cultural leaders, entertainment industry people, politicians, and the media is obviously complicit in this conspiracy in the true sense of the word against the government of we the people of the United States. Let me say that again. The mainstream media, I don't mean it in a broad brush sweep. I don't mean it generalized. And I'm not speaking of all of the mainstream media, but clearly there are high-level members inside the mainstream media and all the different industries of the mainstream media. There exists high-level members of that media who are complicit in this crime of attempting to overthrow the duly elected president of the United States, Donald Trump. How many there are, we don't know. But there are obviously people in the highest levels of power because when we look at the mainstream media, they all communicate from the same script. Whether it's the New York Times, the Washington Post, or whatever, CNN, they're all using the same talking points, which implies that the entire attack against Trump is orchestrated. So we now have a collusion between the mainstream media, or at least a certain percentage of it in the highest levels, an intelligence agency of sorts, the FBI, key political operatives in both the Republican and Democratic Party, who are conspiring, if these accusations are proved to be true, to impeach, remove the President of the United States of America, which is an act of revolution against the people of the United States of America. You understand that, I hope. Now, let's read what the Founding Fathers said. The media is not going to tell you this, because the media is controlled by the globalist elite. The globalist elite hate the Constitution and the Bill of Rights of the United States of America. They want to destroy America as an independent sovereign nation state. That's why they hate Donald Trump. And that's also one of the reasons we wrote Trumpocalypse, the End Times President, a battle against the globalist elite and the countdown to Armageddon. This is why myself and Troy Anderson wrote the book. because we go into the whole thing about the deep state. We also go into the various plans that are being used by the deep state. One is the attempt to psychologically discredit Trump as being emotionally or psychologically unstable. We expose that entire plan, things you've never heard before. We expose the plan to destroy the U.S. economy, create race riots, destabilize society so that they can blame it on Trump and impeach him. We expose that deep state plan. We expose the deep state itself in Trumpocalypse, and we go into depth about why the globalist elite are universally united. And they have publicly said that Donald Trump represents the greatest threat to their new world order and the plans of the globalists, that Donald Trump is the single most greatest threat. They don't want to see our economy rebound, because that would prove that their world socialist state is a nightmare. They don't want to see the American people free. The globalist elite. I hope you understand this. This isn't a game. Don't be naive. Do not be naive. You can't afford to be naive. There's a thief at your door. There's a wolf at your door. There's robbers and killers at your door. Do you understand that? Not just your door. The door to your wife, your children, your family, your grandchildren, your neighbors, your friends, the people you go to church with. There's a war going on, and there are people of very evil intent that want to rob, steal, kill, and destroy, which is very Luciferian, by the way. For the devil goes about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may rob, kill, steal, and destroy. Except they do it by manipulating laws, etc. The entire purpose of all these trade treaties in the last 30 years, no, in the last 40 years, the trade treaties that formed the European Union, the trade treaties that were passed by both political parties in the United States of America, the entire purpose of them, the real agenda, the secret agenda, passed by Republican presidents and Democratic presidents, the real agenda was to transfer the wealth of the middle class in America and the wealth of the working class in America out of America to third world nations and then into the hands of the globalist elite. The same principle holds true for people in the European Union. And that is why, with mathematical certainty, read my book, A Prophecy of the Future of America, 2016-2017. It's an entirely different book. It contains brand new material than the first book, A Prophecy of the Future of America. Ignore the fact that it says 2016 to 2017. It will be current until like 2024. But in that book, Prophecy of the Future of America, 2016-2017, I give you extensive, easy to read, simple financial data, as well as an explanation of what happened to the income of the American middle class and working class, and during certain time periods. And once you see it, it'll blow your mind. As the American income of the middle class and the working class was cut in half, starting around 2008. But this actually began with the implementation of the trade treaties, which is supposed to create economic prosperity. No, that was a lie. The purpose of the trade treaties was to drain the American middle class and working class of their prosperity and send 80,000 manufacturing plants to foreign nations. Not to help poor people, because guess where this money ended up? Read the book. I trace it for you. This massive amount of money that was stolen from the middle class and the working class ended up going directly into the hands of the globalist elite. Now, when I wrote that book, I had all the data. And this book was written just last year, Prophecy of the Future of America, 2016-2017. The data at that time, a year ago, was that 3% of the world's population owned 97% of the wealth. So that means the 3% who were the globalist elite owned 97% of the world's wealth. 1 year has passed since I wrote that book, and now just 1% of the world's population, the globalist elite, own 99% of the world's wealth. Where did they get all this wealth? How come there's such a consolidation of wealth and power, this rapid rise in their wealth and power among the globalist elite? Well, as you can see in the book, because I make it really simple, is they stole it from the American middle class and working class. The same with the European working class and middle class and other regions around the world. That is not an accident. That's the purpose of the trade treaties. And there's other trade treaties that are currently, Trump has not yet dismantled them. But he's the only American president that has gone before the press, challenged the globalist economic stronghold over the world, and has called it for what it is. It's a rigged system designed to destroy America. And you know, for your friends that are socialists and progressives, they're very, very naive. They've been told falsely that all this extra money, that's a joke, of the American middle class and working class is going to social justice, that it's going to help the poor people in third world nations. And after all, as the Pope regularly says, it's the Christian thing to do, and it's going to help poor people. That's a lie. Do you understand that's a total lie? It's total propaganda. It is a total lie, a total damnable lie. None of that money, listen to me, none of that money gets transferred from the middle class in America or the working class in America to poor people in third world countries. It's not a Christian thing. It's not going to poor people. You understand that, right? I don't care what the Pope says. He's not telling you the truth. Sorry, my Catholic brothers and sisters. The Pope's lying to you. What more can I say? The reason we know where the money is going, because if you look at the data I supplied in 2016, 2017, The Prophecy of the Future of America, you can see unmistakably that not a penny of that money is going to raise the standard of living of the poor and starving people in third world nations. Not a penny. Guess where the money's going? You already know. I just told you. It all went to super enrich the globalist elite. They kept the money. That's why in just 1 year, they moved from, the globalist elite moved from being 3% of the population that controlled 97% of the wealth. And 1 year later, the globalist elite are now 1% of the population and they control 99% of the wealth. It was stolen to make the rich richer because they don't believe in a middle class. Okay? The United Nations, Bono, this is why I get very emotional about some of the stuff I talk about. That Bono propaganda video that I've been talking to you about, the new U2 music video, you know, with all the subliminal messages. Look, to be blunt, I respect Bono as an artist. I probably would like the guy personally. But he is a puppet being controlled by the puppet masters, just like John Lennon was, just like Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt are. He doesn't have a clue about what he's talking about. The United Nations is not designed to create social justice and utopia on Earth. You need to throw away your bong. You need to, especially in California, you need to chuck your marijuana and hash brownies in the garbage. You need to quit drinking, a whole bottle of Jack Daniels every night and 3 cans of Coke or whatever. You need to wake up and recognize there's a gun to your head and they're robbing you blind, which means they're making you a slave. They're breaking you. Do you understand that? Do you understand what breaking a person means? They're breaking you psychologically so that you will become their slave. They have never believed, since the beginning of time, in a prosperous middle class. That is their great con game that began at Mystery Babylon. If you want to know, if you really want to know what's going on and how this originated, read my first book, A Prophecy of the Future of America. Read Mass Awakening. Read the Babylon Code. Become self-educated. Then read Trumpocalypse and Conquering the Matrix. And you will see this is an age-long game that began at Mystery Babylon for the purpose of creating only two classes. America is the only nation in the history of the world that has had a thriving, large, prosperous middle class. Every other nation and civilization in history has had only two classes: the kings and queens, the rulers, and the slave class. The globalist elite do not believe in a middle class. Quit being so stupid. You're being taken advantage of. And to my brothers and sisters in Christ who are African American or Latino or from the Middle East or wherever, there are certain people who call you minorities. I don't believe. I think it's a disparaging term. I'm not calling you minorities. I'm calling you my brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ. But you come from communities, just like the white community is very much brainwashed right now. Your communities are being brainwashed with mind control. And only you can educate them. Because, as Aldous Huxley said, one of the master planners of the New World Order, author of Brave New World, and he coined the term the scientific dictatorship. He said these chilling words: in the truly effective scientific dictatorship, men and women will not even know that they're slaves, but they will learn to love their slavery. That's where we are. White and whatever racial group you're from, we're in the same boat, just different parts of the boat. They program you with the word social justice. I see so many African Americans and Latinos and whites brainwashed into thinking that this utopian world socialist state, once we get rid of evil America, is going to bring about some kind of paradise, social justice, wealth redistribution. Oh my God. You don't realize how stupid you sound next to the record of historical fact. Historical fact screams, it thunders that is not true. It has never been true. There has never been a civilization or a nation in the history of mankind, with the exception, by the way, of the United States of America. You may not like that, but it happens to be true. That attempted, however imperfectly, it has attempted to establish some level of social justice. Okay? You may not like the level, but there was an intent, however imperfect. But when you're talking about these nations that you idolize, when these movie stars and Hollywood directors go down to Cuba, and they're lying to you, they don't know anything about Cuba. There's the fake Cuba where the tourists get drunk and they get to see the hookers and all the rest of that stuff. And there's the real Cuba, which is a dictatorship. They've never been inside the belly of a dictatorship. There are slaves and they're the masters. China knows that. China's sophisticated. And so there are people that are trying to turn you into slaves. And one of the ways they do it is to manipulate your mind and your heart and your soul. And they can't come out in the open and tell you, then you get mad. So they create secret societies that go way back. We expose these secret societies in Trumpocalypse because they've been running America behind the scenes from the beginning. That's why they're at war with Donald Trump, because as Newt Gingrich said, the reason the elite hate Donald Trump is he didn't join their secret societies and take part in their secret ceremonies. All of this is against the Constitution of the United States of America. It's illegal what they're doing. Okay? It's illegal what they're doing. And, I mean, look, these are your rights in the Bill of Rights. Congress is not allowed to make a law that prohibits your right to freely exercise your Christian religion. Yet there are hundreds of laws that are on the books right now that restrict your right to practice your Christian religion. Congress is not allowed to inhibit your free speech, but they do it all the time. The internet companies are doing it. Social media companies are doing it with bots and algorithms, censoring your free speech. You're supposed to have the right to have freedom of the press. That means the press is not to be dominated. The mainstream media is not to dominate everybody and be controlled by 6 globalist corporations for the purpose of putting out globalist propaganda. You're supposed to have alternative media in the internet, social media, and otherwise. That's freedom of the press. They're destroying it. They're attacking it by stealth through computer algorithms. The right of the people to peacefully assemble, that's under threat. The right of a well-regulated militia, that's being attacked. The Amendment 4, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. Okay? You're not allowed in America, if you're obeying the Constitution, or the government is not allowed to conduct surveillance on you without a proper warrant. And that means electronic surveillance. Electronic surveillance is the same thing as searching your personal effects, your houses, your papers, your private material. It is illegal for them to do it, but they're doing it constantly. And then they lie before Congress and say they're not doing it. Who are you going to believe? Snowden or Julian Assange? You think they're lying? This is trampling on your Constitution. And who's doing it? These same high-level people who are conspiring to get rid of Trump illegally, including kill him. Do you think that's an extreme statement? Read Trumpocalypse. I interview a very well-known pastor who, when he was visiting the White House, one of the highest level members of Congress met with him privately and warned this pastor that there was a plot to take out Donald Trump, and he meant specifically to assassinate him. And this was told to the pastor. And I spoke to this pastor, an hour or two after this event happened and before he went public with it. And in Trumpocalypse, you have an inside story. Why is there's an investigation against the fake Russian collusion. Where's the investigation on this plot to kill the president? Okay, I know this is heavy. Visit paulmcguire.us. I need you, this is called Speaking the Truth. I need you to stand with me as true intercessory prayer warriors. Thank you for doing it. Thank you for being obedient. I need you to listen to the Lord and creatively help us distribute our media, our radio programs, etc., to do an end run around the rigging. I need you to seek the Lord, as so many of you have been doing, and ask the Lord, Lord, what can I do to help Paul and this ministry? And then whatever God tells you to do, simply be obedient and make the donation or contribution that God calls you to do. And you can do that at paulmcguire.us. That's paulmcguire.us. And I want to thank each and every one of you who pray, who support us in various ways, who make financial contributions and donations. I want to thank you who use your creative gifting to help spread the message far and wide. I want to thank you. And I want to thank you most of all because of your obedience to the Lord Jesus Christ and for your love, for loving your neighbor as yourself. Because you see, if you truly loved your neighbor as yourself, you'd do everything you could to save your neighbor from a horrible fate. That means salvation, but it also means protecting them as you can in this life. So I want to thank you. I want to thank each and every one of you, especially as we move into this new year. God is going to do some very powerful things on behalf of us, his people, this year. I want you to have a note of expectancy. God Almighty is going to answer our prayers. We're going to see great deliverance along with great confrontation. The Lord is going to reveal to his people that, hey, I've heard your prayers. And expect God to intervene supernaturally in your life personally and in our nation. Really expect it and cry out to him to do it. And he's going to do it. God bless you. I'm Paul McGuire. Visit paulmcguire.us. That's paulmcguire.us.